Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the 10-Second Gems podcast. Listen, man, for those of you that have been listening, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate everything that you've been doing in terms of sending me emails, giving me advice on how I should change things and this and that. I've made some adjustments. I'm still making adjustments. This is a learning process. And the beautiful thing is when I'm about to sign this $100 million Spotify deal in 10 years, you're going to be able to say you were one of the first people to help me get this thing off the ground. All right. So anyway, enough of the bragging. My co-host today, he doesn't know this, but I consider him to be a major piece in my musical journey puzzle. Why? Because he was the first person to hire me to produce on a record out here in Nashville, Tennessee, and in the Christian music game. Actually, because of him, I left New York on the cusp of working on a Busta Rhymes record. I just worked on a P.D. Pablo record for Jive Records, and the song that P.D. did, he was kind of coming at Busta. Supposedly that was a rumor, and then Busta was like, "Yo, I want to get a beat from whoever made this one, blah blah." And I literally told my guy, my agent in New York, I told him, I said, "Listen, I'm off to Nashville. That's where God is calling me." Somebody told me years ago when I was a kid that God would call me, and when He did, that I needed to say yes no matter where it was. So this is my friend. His name is Verbs. A lot of you that know who Liquid is and that have been emailing Liquid, me, whatever. That sounds kind of silly. A lot of you have even asked about Verbs. And this is a busy guy. He's a dad. He's doing a bunch of other stuff. He's got his own podcast. And I just shot him a text message, a couple days ago? Verbs?
A couple days ago, yeah.
Yeah, a couple days ago. And I didn't say, "Hey, man, you think you could be on the podcast?" I texted him and said, "Are you ready to be on the podcast?" I think is what I said. And I didn't even know if he knew I had a podcast, but he texted me back and said, "These days usually work for me. What time?" And I thought that was great.
I knew who it was from, man. So the podcast was a secondary situation.
That's right. Dude, listen, I was over the moon, man. So, Verbs. This is my man Verbs right here. Dude, last time we ran into each other, it was at a Publix a couple years ago. And you had, obviously I've met your wife. When you were dating your wife, we were roommates.
we were, man. And I always remember, what was that, your nickname? Was it Mr. Deeds?
Yeah. That was my nickname. That was hilarious. For you. Because this guy, he would just pop in and out of the apartment. Do you remember the time that you came home and I'm like, "Yo, what's up, bye-bye?" We talking for like 10 minutes and you go, "Hey, I'm going to Africa I'm go out there, see my girlfriend and blah, blah." And I say, "Oh, okay, that's what's up. When you going out there?" He's like, "I'm about to leave for Atlanta in like an hour." You remember that? And I was like, "Bro, going to Africa in an hour?" He's like, "Well, I got to leave for Atlanta in an hour and my flight leaves at like 6 a.m. And it's like 10 o'clock at night.
Man, it's funny because not until you told me, like, when you rehearsed when you played that back, I was like, man, I guess that does sound kind of abnormal. Like when you think of just, in about an hour, that's not like we're going down the street, to Kroger or something. We're going across the water to another country in an hour. So that was hilarious to me, man. When I thought about how it registered to other folks,
right?
Yeah, man.
And then you didn't. And it's not like you called or sent me an email saying, "Hey, I'm coming back this day." Literally, like a month and a half later. First of all, that was the other thing. I said, "Well, how long you going?" You're like, "Oh, I'm about to be out there for like a month, maybe a month and a half." Do you remember how hard I laughed when you said that? I'm like, "Yo, you." I said, "Bro, what did I say?" I said, "Yo, you a superhero, bro. You did." We was trying
to make that happen, man. I was trying to seal the deal and bring back the wife, man.
Dude, I remember that so well. I remember telling you that you was either a secret agent for the government. I said, "Yeah, all right, you gonna go out there, pop a suitcase open and pull out like a big gun with a silencer." And then like a month and a half later, I'm in the crib watching TV. And you scared the crap out of me because you just came walking out your room. I'm like, "Yo, how long?" You said, "Oh, yeah, I just got back this morning." I'm like, "Bro, what in the world And that's when I started calling you the dude from Mr. Deeds. the
Man,
butler.
that is, I remember that story vividly, man.
Dude.
Wait, so let me just so I know where we at. Are we referring to you on this podcast? Are you Victor on the podcast? I don't want to.
That's a good question. That's a good question. So I introduced myself.
You're a man of many names.
Yeah, I introduced myself at the beginning of the podcast as Victor Okendo, which is my name.
Okay.
Pete's my nickname. You could just call me Pete. People already know that I used to be. Yeah. So no need for the Liquid. Liquid is my wannabe cool name. It always has been. But yeah, man. So dude, thank you again for being on the podcast, bro. Last time I ran into you, you were with
absolutely.
It was crazy to see you with your kids because obviously I knew you were married. But to see you, I see you 1 minute, we're moving out of the apartment, right? I think we may have done a couple things on the road, and then I don't see you for a long time after your wedding. And then next time I see you, you got what, 3 kids? 3, right?
We have 3 now, yeah.
Yeah, you had your babies running around Publix, and your wife looked like she was just trying to wrangle them. And I was like, yo, that's so crazy. My man got 3 kids.
It's real, man. It's real.
What's the fatherhood game like, man?
Man, I'll tell you this. It's an opportunity to always increase your own growth. Because one, your kids are constantly growing, and your kids hit different seasons of life. And fatherhood requires you to grow along with them, but not only just grow along with them, also stay one step ahead, because you got to learn how to, motherhood and fatherhood shifts as they shift the seasons in their life. And so you got to keep your head in the game long enough to just be able to do a self-assessment of where you are and be able to grow with your kids to continue to be the parent that they would need you to be in those seasons, man. So fatherhood, I think parenthood in general, man, it's if you're doing it right, then you should be learning constantly every day that there's something more to learn. So
that's a gem right there, right? So if you're parenting, not only is it a 24-hour job, but it's also a 24-hour learning experience.
It is. And somebody said this the other day about just, I think classic fatherhood is the dad is the provider of the household, meaning they're the ones that provide, they bring home the bacon, so to speak, provide monetarily. But I think now we realize that, not just providing monetarily and financially for your home, but being present, being there, emotionally, mentally, spiritually for your children is just as important as bringing the check home. Man. So that's a shift for a lot of folks because we might have grown up that way.
Right.
And just, again, learning that as an adult, it's like, oh, my kid actually needs me here to be present, whether it's, on the iPad with them playing Roblox or outside kicking a soccer ball. To him, that's providing. They don't really have a framework to know how you fully financially, at least at the age of my kids are. They don't have a framework to how you financially provide. They just know food winds up in the fridge. But then they also know how much dad is around and how much, FaceTime they get with dad. So learning that, again, it's a sacrifice, that my time is not my own anyway. But especially when they're younger, being able to maximize on those seasons, man, just being present with them whenever possible.
Do you, it's funny because the last 2 episodes, I kind of touched on the Kirk Franklin thing, and I think I want to touch on that with you, especially since I don't know if you know Kirk, but I know that we both have friends in that circle, right? So I want to touch on that, but before we do that, I want to ask you, have you and your wife started addressing the plan for social media for your children?
That's a good question. It's funny because I'll answer your question with a short. We have not addressed the plan, but it's funny because Facebook has this new messenger app that's Messenger Kids. So they kind of frame it as a safe way to where their accounts are linked to yours and you can see the activity on the account. But I don't even know how it popped up in our household, but I know my daughter, she's 10 years old right now, about to turn 11. She's already on, Messenger Kids, interacting with some of her friends that she knows and goes to school with. but there was no plan. It was just something that kind of crept into the flow of the household. And so I think, really it comes back to, we monitor it. Obviously, we have a 6 o'clock curfew as far as devices and web time in general.
That's good.
But that's the only thing we've kind of set in place, is just because we know you don't just want to leave your kids to explore online, and you just want to keep your eyes on the situation. But as far as plan, that's the only thing we knew, was there's going to be a curfew, and that we'd be aware of what they were visiting and spots that they would go to online.
That's a good gem. See, and Verbs, the whole idea behind this podcast is just to drop gems along the way. And I always I've been saying in the episodes that I don't claim to have all the answers, and I'm definitely not a guru. So just so you know, and when I say there's a gem there, I don't want you to feel like I'm putting pressure on you to give advice to the world about this. But dude, I really love what you just said. And I hope that the parents that are listening to this are open-minded enough to say, wow, that was really good. Dude, what you just said, what stuck out to me about what you just said was that there's a curfew for devices. And that's so dope, because I don't know that I've heard a parent address it that way. And I haven't thought about it that way, but that's a really good way to look at it, where it's like, all right, cool, it's 6 o'clock. It's like when we was kids, we couldn't be out on the block past 10:30. It was like, all right, you had to be in the house.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the same vibe, right? Because even now, kids aren't outside. To kids means something completely different than it did to us.
Yeah. And again, man, I think a lot of it is, you building the plane as you're flying it, because I think there's a lot of parental advice out there.
Yeah.
But then it also has to come down to the temperament, the personality, and how God has wired and designed your child as far as what they respond to, whether it be just nurturing wise, discipline wise, and that sort of thing. And when you have multiple children, you gotta be listening enough to know each 3 of your children and their temperaments and the way that they're bent to be able to grow. Right. And I think that's a lot of work as well. But so my two younger boys, they don't have those accounts that my daughter has. She's a little bit older, and so there's an element of it that she's shown herself trustworthy enough to have that sort of activity online. And plus, if we ever feel like this is not working, that we just we shut it down. I don't necessarily think the answer is always to shut everything down all the way, because eventually they're going to have to interact on social media in some way, shape, or form. So we rather it be us kind of guiding that process versus just letting the free for all open up, and then she have to learn out of our house, and maybe in a way that we wouldn't approve of.
And I was just saying that in the last episode, where I was talking about how parents can't expect their kids to act a certain way online if they're not acting a certain way online. And I heard I'm teaching and I'm constantly interacting with parents, and one thing I heard a few years back that really it hurt me. So I know it had to hurt the young man that was in the room listening to his dad say this. But the dad was saying to the kid, you're a child, I'm a grown man, I've earned the right to be the way I am with blah, blah, blah. And what I was saying, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I definitely want to get, your opinion, and every dad that I have as a friend has opinion on this, but it's like, who do you want your kids looking at? If you've earned the right to act a certain way, who do you want your kid to get their example from? Especially with, man, I could not imagine having a daughter in these times, bro. Even when I'm on Instagram, I get like, how you go to your stories, like, so I spent the last, like throughout this pandemic, I spent probably 6 months constantly. I don't know if you know, but there's an option where you can, when you go to that picture in the history, you can go to like the little ellipses, the little 3 dots, and you can hit see less posts like this. There's like a thing like that. And because a lot of my students follow me, a lot of what they looking at comes into my thing as a suggested. So luckily,
Right.
After like 6 months, I'm finally at a point where like those pictures aren't showing up. But I would open the picture up and I would be looking at it and I'm just thinking like, dude, this is such a sad time for not only little girls and young women, but these women. You know what I mean? Like Nas had a line, remember Nas's line, sell your soul out, not even your girl is sacred. Remember that line?
Yeah.
That line stuck out to me all through this pandemic. Anytime I open Instagram, it pops up in my mind because as a man, I'm looking at this feeling bad for them. So I'm like, I know other like girls their age or teenage girls, they're either hating on these girls because of the damage that they're doing to the woman brand in general, and also the pressure that young ladies must feel to be like that. You know what I mean? Especially when it's being rewarded. So it's just kind of a weird thing, man. So, dude, I'll definitely keep you guys in prayer for that. I'm keeping all my friends that have daughters in prayers for that because it's heavy. And I mean, my students, like, I love my students like as if they were my little brothers and sisters. You know what I mean? So sometimes I'm like, man, I don't know, it's scary.
Yeah. And it's funny, man, too. I don't know if you watched that documentary on Netflix, that Social Dilemma.
I was going to ask you that. Yep.
I mean, like, think about it. The architects of the whole setup have told us, look, this thing is out of hand. We created a monster. It's a beast. We don't even know how to shut it down. Matter of fact, we don't even allow our own kids to operate within this space. Like, when the people who created it are telling you this, then it should be a red flag to say, oh, I can't just let my children, and again, my children are younger, but I can't introduce them to something that I know is going to cause them less focus, less time, less opportunity to actually build face-to-face relationships.
Right.
Like, it sucks you in. It's almost like I remember this documentary from way back where they were talking about how they were selling these Barbie toys and now came with a plastic Visa credit card that can go with the little Barbie cash register. And like the whole plot behind it was to introduce kids to the idea of, oh, you can buy whatever you want. Just get a credit card or get 2 credit cards. And then that's kind of like the pathway to, to debt, basically, because you've been introduced at an early age. And if you have something that you want, all you got to do is just swipe your card and it's yours, We'll
take mom and dad's card, right?
It's all strategy to me. Exactly.
Yeah, it's definitely all strategic, man. And this almost led me to, Verbs, I don't know if I want to drag you in on this conversation. But I'm gonna get to that point in a second. Again, with Kirk, man, right? And I'm defending Kirk because what I was saying in the last podcast is nobody's asking about the young man. Everything is about Kirk. And what I was saying was Kirk is a human being before he was ever a singer or even a Christian, right?
Right.
So for people to automatically be like, well, he should know better. You know what? He does know better. But what I was saying is like, nobody's asking how many times has Kirk sat his son down calmly and said, son, blah, 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 and laid it out, right? Because the only thing we see is what we see, and we don't even have context. You know what I'm saying? And
Exactly.
I would imagine, and listen, I know you and I both know people that are worth millions of dollars. Through my wife's relationships, I know some people that are worth in the $700 million range. And that's a little bit more than some of our rich friends that are in the Christian music industry. But one thing is, the first thing I thought to myself is, what did he want that Kirk didn't give him? That caused, because now it's like these kids spoiled, Doc. They spoiled. And I have a friend right now who I was having this conversation with a couple days ago, and he admitted to me, he said, listen, bro, my mistakes as a dad didn't come from me not being there for my kids. It was from me giving them everything I didn't have. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So
Facts.
I was just thinking like, well, maybe that's it. I'm not saying that Kirk's son is wrong. I'm not saying that Kirk is wrong. I just think, I used to go to Strong Tower, and Chris Williamson had this line. It's actually my favorite sermon ever. Is a sermon he had called It was called Jesus Remember Me, and it was about the two guys that were with Christ on the cross. And one thing he was saying is that everybody's all about grace until it's for somebody else. Then all of a sudden, if we don't agree, we got a problem with it. And then he goes on to say, well, what if Jeffrey Dahmer? What if, and he's talking about God's grace.
Yeah.
And so I was telling my friend, I'm like, dude, we just have to be graceful on both ends, but especially with Kirk, because Kirk, in some place, I mean, he can't walk into a church and sit down without somebody recognizing him. So his scrutiny is harder than his son's, But I'm also looking at the son like, all right, dude, what's up with you? What did you want? You know what I mean? So I don't know. I just want to get your thought on that. What's your, and you don't have to give me your opinion, but obviously, again.
No, I don't mind at all this one. I mean, a couple of things. I think I'm in line with you, man. I don't know Kirk personally. I might have met Kirk briefly way back in the day, man. But again, like you mentioned, man, we don't have full context of that whole interaction or that conversation, or just even their relationship as father and son. I do know that when you hear it at first, it's like, oh, Kirk Franklin cusses out his son, which I saw the headline, and then I read this little article. I didn't listen to the audio clip just because I didn't feel like I needed to hear it.
Yeah.
I can read and see what actually unfolded in their conversation. But first of all, his son is 33 years old. That's a grown man.
See, I thought he was. I literally the other day in the last episode said, this guy's got to at least be in his early 20s. I didn't know he was that. That's a grown man right there, bro.
Exactly. So whatever happened, whatever transpired, it's whatever level, they were having a grown man conversation. Like two men were talking.
Right.
Obviously, whatever it sounds like, they've had challenges in the past as far as their relationship. But for me, that was one thing that was just that funny with me. It was like, well, man, this is a 33-year-old man who has his own thoughts and opinions and all of that in the middle of what looks like to be just a difficult relationship that they're trying to work out.
Right.
So as a parent, and I don't know how old Kirk is, but obviously he's older than his son. But as a parent, like if you're trying to work stuff out and then your child checks out and they're at that age, you have a wit's end, and so I'm going to pause there because Kirk doesn't strike me. Again, I don't know him, but I see just his interactions. I know people that do know him. I see his interactions and how he moves online, and interviews and whatnot. But he strikes me as a person, if you're willing to come out with your own personal business and put everything out there for people to dissect and criticize, like some years ago when he did the thing about his struggle with pornography and all of that.
Thank you.
Like that's a deeply personal thing that nobody else would put it out there like he did at that time. I think nobody was really doing it at that level.
And he didn't have to put it out there.
And he didn't have to do it.
Right, exactly.
So I don't feel like he's trying to hide something about this situation with his son. It was just probably something that was a heated situation. He was frustrated, obviously. And that's kind of what came out because he lost the regular words that he would probably normally use to communicate in a loving manner to his son. And this is what came out.
Right.
But the other thing was, and again, I'm only going off of the fruit of the situation. The fact that his son was willing to post that online.
Thank you.
Was a little bit awkward to me as well.
Well, what's a little more interesting to me now that I think about it, if my man is 32, 33, he probably got his own kids. So you would think,
possibly,
bro, if you got your own kids, you took the biggest L in the world because you put your entire family, your immediate family, you put them into a wheelbarrow and rode them down the hill. And if you got kids, you threw them in the wheelbarrow too. And it's like, dude, now, if your kid do that to you someday, you don't got no defense. Because again, who you want your kids looking at? Your kid looking at you like, well, what about the time you did it to Pop-Pops? You know what I mean? Like, there's no escaping.
And the other element to that situation that I found interesting, which probably, to Kirk's benefit is it sounds like there was somebody else on the call, because it was kind of, again, them trying to work out these tension points that Kirk and his son had. So somebody else was there on the phone along with them, helping them navigate through whatever that situation was.
There was another voice you could hear. Yeah. You could hear somebody else talking in the background. Yeah.
So, I mean, that was smart in the first place to say, look, I'm going into this conversation with my son. This is what we're trying to work out. Be an extra voice or a mediator or a facilitator in the room, just so you have context and know what's being talked about, so we can work past this thing or whatever the goal of the conversation was. So,
right.
Yeah. I understand how that could happen as a parent, especially, I don't have grown kids yet, but I understand how that could be a very real possibility, to where you lose the regular words that you would normally communicate with, and stuff comes out. So
right. And you know what? Let's look at this from because, man, this just dawned on me. And I was talking about this with my friend Isaac a few episodes ago, but I'm glad I have you on to see what your reaction to this is. Let's look at it from the son side, okay?
Yeah.
I got off the road and I pretty much quit the Christian music industry, at least temporarily, to save my marriage. And I'm constantly telling musicians, I was telling a musician, one of the young guys that plays at church today, I'm like, bro, listen, I will absolutely, as your friend, support you wanting to be on the road and all that. But you got a kid. Do not risk your kid's future over being on the road, over your own personal experiences and money. Because I was saying in a few episodes ago with my guy Isaac, all money's not good money. And I know you learned that, being in that world for so long. And there was a situation, and you probably don't remember this, but I came home one day really pissed off about something with the guy who was the A&R guy at the label. We're not gonna, but I remember you said to me, because I was like, oh, well, I took this project and blah, blah, and I already took it for less money, and now this. And you said to me, well, that's the problem, is that the money's, even though the money's there, it's not always the right money. And then somebody later on, a buddy of mine, Javier Solis, you know Jav, right? Javier, in a conversation with him one day, we were talking, and he said, Pete, that's the issue, is that not all money is good money. And I remember you saying it, you said it in a different way, but you said it to me, and then after that, a few other people did. And when I was going through, I don't even know if you know all this, I'm actually gonna do a podcast probably with or without my wife, but I'm gonna lay out, I almost lost my marriage because of that. And then, because like you said earlier, we're the providers. So that's part of the role. And my whole thing was, well, if this is what I was doing when you met me, this is what I was doing when you married me. And if you like driving a car, if you like eating, even though she had a job, this was my excuse. Well, then I got to be out on the road. But I almost lost everything, my future with my wife, because number one, I was trying to experience the life of a industry person, and I was trying to maximize my money. So I'm glad that we're at this point, because if we're looking at Kirk's thing, maybe his relationship with his son has to do with maybe Kirk not always being there, but here's my thing. Number one, that's nobody's business, right? That's not my business that, whatever he's. Right. And number two, regardless of that, you 33 years old, B, you don't need to be putting your pop out there on the front street like that. Because again, and hopefully my young listeners, again, you're going to hear me say this again. When you do those types of things, you set wheels in motion that you cannot stop at all. Right? So I don't know. I just think, could you imagine, bro, trying to do what we was doing when we were living together as a dad? Could you imagine that?
No,
the road hustle and selling records and.
I can't, man. And I think I love where you're going with this topic also, because I think, again, in retrospect, you have to really know. Well, let me say, I'll back up. I was having a conversation with the artist not too long ago who spends a lot of time on the road as well. And I think the earlier that you learn, man, there's seasons to this life in general. And then there's seasons to what you may do as an artist. But the quicker you learn that this season could possibly end, or it may turn into something else. Matter of fact, you as an artist just want to do something totally, completely different and just want to say, you know what, I'm going to step back, or I'm stepping out of this space to pursue and grow in some other ways.
Yeah.
Because the industry makes a lot of promises, it makes zero guarantees. And so you'll spend a lot of time chasing the carrot that may pay off or may not. But when you're already carrying responsibilities as a husband, as a father, or whatever it might be, and you're trying to pursue this, you could be doing it just for the love of music.
Right.
The love of creating music, the love of making music that people listen to that can hopefully be transformative to the person who hears it. But there's a lot of things that are connected to that to be able to get to that music, to the place where you want it to go, that becomes part of the machine. And again, that machine is going to make promises, but no guarantees. So you are sacrificing a lot of your time. You're sacrificing a lot of your bandwidth, a lot of your family space. All of these things are being put on the table and possibly are going to be disrupted. And so you have to really know that this is the space that you need to be in, and that you feel, I'll even say you have to almost know that you're called by God to go into this space and stay focused, especially if you're married, especially if you're a parent, and stay focused and don't get distracted by the sideline activity. You have to know the why and the whole reason behind why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be the one benefit that you'll have, is putting those horse blinders on and knowing that you got a focused goal that you're trying to attain. Now, again, we both know people that are out here that have been doing it a long time, have been super effective, have made music that has transformed people's lives. But I think they're the exceptions to the rule, and not everybody is promised that sort of a run. So you just have to be, again, cognizant of who you are as a person, where you're at in life, where you see yourself going, because it's really a long game effort versus, how quickly can I attain. If you are acquiring fame too quickly, especially at a younger age, you're going to have a hard time processing the fame as it comes in, because, who was it that said that fame is like a drug? And if you're not accustomed to it, you're constantly chasing it. And then when it ends, I think the truth, he had named his an EP called Chasing Ghosts. You're trying to chase that same high that you experienced. Meantime, you're dragging yourself out there. You could be dragging your family out there as well. But just know everything that comes along with what you're pursuing. And if you don't have an idea and you're new to the game, you just want to sit down with people who've experienced it, maybe have experienced some losses, to hear their story, because they're going to have some wisdom on how you can probably navigate around those things and not have to experience them yourself.
And that falls under the umbrella of success, period, right? Verbs, if we're looking at it, even whether you're a musician or whether you're the best janitor in the building, you know what I mean? Like, yes. It goes for any, whether you're a lawyer, a doctor, whatever. If you sweep floors and you're the best guy to wax the floors in the building, man, like, go home, do it tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
And I'm always telling musicians too, especially young guys, I'm like, hey, know when it's time to get off the road. Cause I'm sure you do, and I definitely do. I mean, I talk to guys all the time that, every now and then through a cigar hang or something, in the last 3 years, I've had at least 8 guys tell me, I wish I would have gotten off a couple years sooner. And yeah, that's important, man. I keep bringing this up in different podcasts, especially for men. Like, I want men, my male listeners especially, to hear other men that have been through that say these things, so that, guys, if you are listening to these and it's already on your heart and you keep hearing it on this podcast and you keep hearing it, dude, listen, it's time to step down, because the last thing you want to do is wake up in your 40s in an apartment by yourself, especially right now during this pandemic, where, could you imagine, bro? Could you imagine waking up one day and then be like, hey, we're not going back out on the road. It's probably going to be a year. I got a friend who's they're getting ready for the Bieber tour right now, and I spoke to him a month after the pandemic officially hit here, where things were shutting down, and he was telling me that they got sent home, and they were telling them maybe you'll be back in May, and they just got back, but everybody's not that fortunate. Apparently, the company that he was working, because he's a freelance guy, but apparently they basically promised everybody that's here is coming back, and sure enough, they brought everybody that wanted to come back, but that's not the same for everybody. And you know a guy, and I know we at least have one friend in common that has a Grammy that went to go. I was saying this the other day. I didn't drop his name, but went to go manage a Smoothie King for a little bit. It's like that's just the way it works. You know, sometimes it's just the way it is, and I don't know.
Yeah, man. I think, and again, I don't think it's all doom and gloom. I'm just saying, the classic count the cost before you get in it. I mean, if you are, an artist who's married, make sure you and your spouse are on that same page as far as what it's going to take. Let's assess the risks. Let's assess the potential time it's going to be. And that way you're in it together, and it doesn't become just an escape to get out on the road and kind of, accomplish the childhood dream of being a rock star or anything like that. Just frame it up properly. If you got other guys around you that can let you know if you're starting to think foolish, then, open your ears to some of that counsel as well, because it's not a game.
It's definitely not a game.
The road will take folks out. Dude, and again, that's not to scare anybody or say, oh, it's a black hole out there. I'm just saying you got to be super wise, knowing where you're going. Do your research, look at other people who you may have admired, and just look at the life and their tenure in the game, and see how you can make some different moves for the longevity of it.
Right. And not to mention, I didn't mention this either, but my tour bus, my very first road experience and my very first tour bus experience came from you.
Really? On a bus? I don't remember taking a bus.
Yeah,
like a full-on Prevost situation.
My first. But this is when I was working on the Liquid record. My first time being in a van / trailer on the road with musicians and everything was with you. Remember, it was you, CZ.
Yes.
And I can't remember. I think Priscilla was on that run. Hold on. I just realized this. So that was, I tell people this story all the time. Yo, remember that church we hit in Milwaukee? That we was all looking at each other? You remember that church in Milwaukee?
Oh, with the line. They had the
Benny
line
Hinn dude. Yeah, they had the Benny Hinn dude,
yes.
Pastor Brock, whatever. And they did anyway. We not gonna get too far into that. But remember, we was all looking at each other like, "Yo, what is going?" That was that run. That was my first run on the road, like actually feeling out what it's like to be in a van and all that. And then eventually,
right, you said bus. I was like, man, I don't remember hitting bus status. I know I was on van status for sure.
No, but you. It wasn't. Okay, I got to take that back. So it was me, you, Grits, and some musicians, but it was a Grits thing. We were going. We were going to what's the joint in Ohio? Alive, is it?
Alive.
Live Fest.
Yeah, Alive Festival.
Yeah, and remember you had hopped on the bus with us, and you did 2 of the festivals, and then you ended up staying at the one in Pennsylvania. The Hershey one.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Right, you ended up staying, and then you was getting taken to Philly to hop in a rental to fly out to somewhere else. Like you and you were meeting a DJ somewhere else, but you hopped on the bus with us for a couple of days. That was when Grits had that kid was their manager. I don't know, I can't remember that kid's name. He's big muscle head dude now.
Talking about Phil?
Yeah, Phil. I think Phil was their little manager at the time. And I wasn't out playing with them. I was out helping them with merch.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, they basically took me out there to make sure that the money wasn't getting taken by the people at the venues or whatever. I remember that. Yeah, but still, I mean, my first time on my first run on a tour bus, it was me, you, Grits, and and some musician guys. Yep. Crazy, man. Time flies, bro. And then, yo, so what about the time? Do you remember? Oh, okay. I got to tell this real quick. I don't
know where you're about to go, but I probably remember what you're about to say.
Well, I'm trying to. Here's the thing with this podcast. I'm trying to figure out the combination between interview and conversation, and not making it so like, hey, tell me about this or whatever. Yo, you remember the time that this was basically right before I moved out here? I was coming out here to work on your record. Do you remember? Yeah. Do you remember waiting for me in the hood at the church?
Pick you up, yeah.
Yeah. So, yo, I pull up to the car and I was late, of course. I pull up to the car and you had the seat all the way back laid down. Yes, so I knock on the window. You sit up. You like, hey man, we got to get out of here. So I get in the car and I'm like, what's wrong? Do you remember what you said to me? You was like, hey.
I was like, man, I heard some sort of gun activity I ain't never heard before outside of a movie. Yeah. It was just like, brack, brack. Yeah. And I smooth put that seat back to get away from the glass in case anything went down.
Yo, I'll never forget that. You said it was gunshots, and I said, oh yeah, there's 2 bars right around the corner. You said, no, you gotta understand, it wasn't regular gunshot. It was like, I was like, yep, that's pretty much accurate. Yo, so in Philly, right, on B in Allegheny, I used to go to a church there called Bethel Temple, and they got 2 churches across the street from each other. And sometimes, bro, listen, dude, the stuff that would go down on Saturday and Friday nights in that intersection, you know, that's a big intersection, bro.
Yeah.
Wow. I'll never forget that.
I can see that.
I got so many good stories with you, dude. Like, as I'm sitting here talking, I'm like, wow, we really, that's crazy. That's crazy. And then while I was dating my wife, you were going back and forth to Africa to court yours.
Yeah, man. That was the, yeah. I mean, looking back at it again, I mean, that was an abnormal situation, man. But obviously we're here, 14 years later, still looking to grow, the individuals in together with each other. But sure, so for the audience listening, so I ended up meeting my now wife way back in 2003 in South Africa. She's from Cape Town originally. So that turned into us basically dating across the ocean for about 2.5 years. So I was only going over there maybe once a year for a couple of weeks to a month at a time, until we got engaged, and then eventually she came stateside. But just thinking about hopping those flights, and then again you dated your wife at the time as well, man. It was like it seems like it was so many moons ago, but again, here we are, man, still in it. So
dude, so we kind of coming up on our time here, but I want to close out again, man. I'm trying to stop this interview thing, but if the thing is, the problem is that when I'm not doing it, when I take away the interview aspect, that's when I get into that hour and 45 minute range. So I'm trying to be structured, just because you guys are gracious enough to listen and all that. But yo, listen, so real quick, are there any plans, or has there been any talk now or in the past about y'all basically going back and staying in Cape Town, like going back to Africa and staying there? Or have your kids been there?
No, they haven't been there yet to visit my wife's family there. Yeah, man, it's always even when I was visiting out there, I could have stayed and been okay. Cape Town is a beautiful place. We haven't been there with our whole family quite yet. I mean, the ultimate move would be, be able to have a spot out there to where we have enough freedom that we can, bounce there at a certain point in the year, because their seasons are flipped down there. So when you get into December, that's summertime for them.
Okay.
And the weather is beautiful and all that. So that's the dream. The dream world version is, hey, it would be cool if we had another spot out there that we could retreat to when needed or as wanted. But yeah, as far as like a full-on move, we haven't really discussed that, seriously.
And for those of you that don't know, Verbs is from Phoenix, so he is nothing to my
AZ.
man. Nothing to my man. Remember when I found out you was from Phoenix, remember the first thing I said to you was, bro, the first time I went to Phoenix, I got out the car and it took me 20 minutes to open my eyes. That's how hot it was, bro. Everybody in the car was like, I can't open my eyes. It was 122 in
at night.
Yeah, it was crazy. And then the next night, so we get the day we get there, right? We hop out. Finally, we get acclimated. We get into the resort. We go to jump in the pool. The pool is hot, bro. So that night it was dumb.
That sounds right.
Yeah, it was crazy hot. That same night, the next day it was in the 115s around there, and then all of a sudden, like 8-9 o'clock rolls around. We coming out of we were staying with these guest homes, like a church guest homes or whatever.
Yep.
And this one dude, man, beautiful freaking house. So he had all of us there for dinner. And when we leave the house, it was cold outside. And he's like, yeah, sometimes it gets really cold at night. Sometimes it's boiling hot. So yeah,
that's that desert weather, man.
Yeah, you'll be just fine in Africa, Doc. I think you'll be good with the weather.
I've been in Nashville so long, man. I done lost my heat legs. So when I go back to visit family in the summertime, I'll probably react the same way you did your first time there. Yeah. It's like, you're not in it, man. You lose what it's like to be out there in that kind of heat.
Do your kids, are they hip to the fact that where mom is from, and have you guys turned them on to that culture and kind of started educating them on that?
Yeah, we have. They talk to my mother-in-law quite a bit, almost every week on the phone. And she's visited here as well. And so it's they've been able to communicate with cousins and all that sort of thing. And, we watch, there's movies, and then even in our schooling. So we're a homeschool family. We chose to, outside of the pandemic and all that, we've been doing it pretty much since jump. And so we educate our kids here at home. So we've been able to fold those sorts of conversations in.
That's cool.
As far as, the history of the country and that sort of thing. So yeah, they're in a position or in a spot where they're looking forward to the time where they can actually get on a plane, and be able to go and visit and actually experience the culture, just being around that side of the family as well.
Does your wife speak to them in her native language, or does she toss little words here and there to them, or no?
Not really. Her first language is English.
Okay, I didn't know if,
So but she would, her second, she knows Afrikaans, but unless she's like in it or in that environment having to use it, she doesn't really speak.
Yeah. That's like the accent thing. When I go back to Philly, it's like, well, who is this guy? People don't understand that. I'm like,
it's like, yeah.
You know how that is. You can turn it off and on, right?
Man, I've always been super intrigued by like folks who like grew up in like Jamaica or the Caribbean. Like when they there at home, they all the way in, but then they had the ability to like go, wherever they need to be in the States. And it's like they could scrub all of that and just, scrub the accent and all of that sort of thing, man. It just turn it on and off as needed.
Turn it right off. I had an embarrassing situation in a studio one time. It wasn't my fault. We were the engineer. I was producing. It was actually for somebody in the Bahamas, and we were cutting stuff. And one of the musicians' girlfriends was in the room, sitting on the couch. We were in I can't remember the name of that studio. It shut down. But so anyway, so we're in the studio, and the engineer at one point, like we cut, and I said, you know what, fellas, let's go to lunch. Let's break for a little bit. I actually was giving everybody per diem, and I had literally just turned around and handed the girlfriend an envelope with like $40 in it. And I was like, hey, here you go. And she's like, oh, what's this for? We're talking, and she talking normal. So then I go to give the engineer his $40. And he looks at me, he says, yeah, man, this will buy me what I need to eat. And I jokingly said, oh yeah, man, go make sure you go get a burger. I was just being silly. And I turn around and my man's shaking his head like, no. So I'm like, what? And it's quiet. Like he's shaking his head.
You thought he was joking.
Yeah, well, me and the engineer were joking, but I turned around to like keep the joke going with my guy who's behind me.
Right.
And he's literally shaking his head and his eyes are like the size of freaking, they were huge. So, and everybody starts noticing it, and little by little, everybody's like, what happened? And then she goes, I'm Jamaican. And I said, oh, I'm sorry, whatever. And then she's like, it's fine, whatever. And I said, come on, like for real, I just talked to you like 30 seconds ago. And then boom, out of nowhere, she's like, you want to hear me speaking my patois? I said, yeah, bro, she goes off. But not goes off on us, but she starts talking and she says, you said that all wrong. This is the way you should have said it. And then she basically like, and then by the end of it, we were all laughing. But yo, after that, bro, I was like, yo, I'm never doing that again.
Yeah. Now, hands down, they got the best accents ever to where it's like, I love it.
Hands down.
I love it, man. Hands
and
down.
Anywhere. Even in the apartment, we used to joke around. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I never do
absolutely.
That. I'm producing a couple songs for a girl in the UK right now. Yeah. And that's one of the accents I love to do just for fun. And I constantly got to be telling, because I meet with them on Zoom like once every other week. And I got to keep remembering and I almost did it the other day.
Not to do it.
Nah, I started to, and then I was like, yo, bro, you got to stop that. So like it's to the point where I'm not even doing it like around the house. Like I usually just do it around the house, like being funny. And first of all, my wife doesn't think it's funny at all. My wife she's not amused by it. So I'm trying to break that habit right now, bro. Last thing I want to do is lose my friendship with the Malanders out in UK.
Absolutely. No, again, man, just from, the traveling that we were able to do. I mean, I love accents in general, man. So, especially like I said, Jamaican accent is probably one of my favorites. But I just find it intrigued by other accents and other dialects and that sort of thing. I probably do the same thing in my head when I visited different places. But I make sure it's clear with the people I'm with.
Right. I am joking. I be trying
to actually learn it, like for real. Like I want to, if while I'm here with y'all, I can try to get this right.
Right.
So it don't feel like I'm trying to offend. I'm definitely not trying to offend anybody.
Dude,
I just love it.
We've been to Italy twice in the last 5 years. And the first time we went, I made my first joke the moment I got off the plane, and my wife said, please do not ruin this trip for me. So the whole time I had to keep checking myself. Now I'm trying to learn Italian because we're going back. As soon as the pandemic's over, we're going to go one more time. Because there's still a few cities we want to hit. But yeah, I'm with you. It's like, you're there. You want to be a part of but I don't know.
Well, here's the other thing too, though, because we got to remember that we have an accent when we go to these other places.
Absolutely.
So sometimes it's like, man, if I can tweak what I'm trying to say a little bit, because even now, like living down south, I think I done picked up a little bit of southern something. So I'm not as aware of it, obviously, when we're here, but when you go somewhere else, it's like we got thick accents.
Absolutely.
So I'll be trying to like tweak mine a little bit so we can at least remove any other barrier of communication.
Right.
Like if you go to order water somewhere, they'll be like, what? Water? What? You don't have that, sir. And then you're like, all right, how do you say water? When they say it, it's like, so the next place you go, you're trying to tweak the word water. So, you can get your glass of water on the table.
Right. And in Philly, we say water. It takes everything inside me not to say water. To say water is hard. Like
exactly.
It's hard. I say water all the time. So I always have to kind of like check myself with that. But anyway, man, so listen, let's close this thing out. Dude.
You don't want to talk about water no more?
Agua. Well, I'm fluent in Spanish. So that's the thing that being fluent in Spanish helps me because it's so close to Italian. So what I was doing, both times that I've been there, every night I just get on, I was already learning it on YouTube, but I would get on Google Translate and sharpen up a little bit. And then the next day, what I love about the Italians too is like if you say, hey, because they mostly all speak English and Spanish and Italian.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I always ask like, hey, do you mind if I ask you if I ordered it? And yeah, sure. So last time we were there, we were in Florence, and we met a young girl. She's like 22 years old from Costa Rica. She just moved to Italy, and she said that within 13 months she was basically fluent. So that was amazing. Yeah, she didn't speak English. She only spoke Spanish and Italian. So of course I'm like, in Spanish, I'm telling her like, yo, oh my God, you're like an angel right now. Can you teach me? And then so throughout the night, she was teaching me, and as I would say things, she'd be like, okay, yeah, but you got to make sure to push the C here, or push the. So that was dope. And if I could listen, if the door ever opens to move out there, if I ever make $1 million, I'm gonna ask God one time, yes, can I go to Italy? And the moment if I even get a half a green light, I'm out.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah. So in response to your question earlier, if that was the case, definitely that would be the second spot.
That's dope. Yeah, because I know. I mean, at the time when we were living together, you were telling me that you loved it out there. So.
Oh yeah.
That's dope. Yo, what's the? You have a podcast, right?
I do have some podcast episodes.
Yeah, I was gonna say
all the podcast platforms for sure. So I started the podcast. It might have been earlier last year. Again, the basis of it all is just fatherhood. I have a brand that I started called Fatherwell, and so we had a podcast. I had a podcast called Today Is Tomorrow, which was powered by the brand. And so there's about 7 or 8 episodes. Whatever platform that you go to podcast to find your favorite podcast, it's on there. But Today Is Tomorrow, a podcast for dads is what it's called.
Okay. And then where can everybody find you on Instagram?
On Instagram, I'm I Know Verbs, IKNOWVERBS. So I'm on there every once in a while, for sure.
Cool. And on YouTube, I'm gonna make sure to I'll put all this on YouTube too. But
yeah.
For those of you that are listening on the audio only streaming sites or apps, go follow my guy. He's a good dude. He has like I said, a nice big building block in my journey through the music world, and in my journey of becoming a man. Because listen, and you know this Verbs. And when I got to Nashville, I was super raw, not quite cultured in terms of anything other than what I knew, and. You at times, were big brother. I'm sure there were times where you wanted to sweep the leg and punch me in the face too, but you never did. I think you were there. You were in the apartment
we talked about earlier, bro.
Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. And you definitely graceful. And you were there the day that. Oh, nah, we're not gonna do that. But when you told me not, remember I was getting in the whip to go to a record label, and you was like, "Hey man." Just have a seat, man. Just have a seat. Don't get in that car. And I always tell, anytime, I mean, I don't tell the story often, but the few times that I have told that story, I always say my roommate literally very nicely told me to have a seat. And ask Madge, if next time you talk to Madge, ask him to tell you the go sit down story. And it would literally came from.
I know the line, yeah. Okay, this is the context now. I didn't know the context, how it all connected. But
yeah, so I literally one time on the road, he was snapping, bro. And I just walked up to him, calmly took the mic out of his hand, and I said, go sit down. And he looked at me like, what? I said, Madge, go sit down. And he was like, whatever, man. He went and sat down. But it was based on, it all started from that time that you told me like, hey man, don't get in that car. So anyway, man, dude, listen, thank you so much for your time. Tell your wife I said thank you for letting me borrow you for an hour and 8 minutes.
Absolutely, bro. I appreciate the invite, man. It's good to catch up, talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, dude, we're in Gallatin. I know it's kind of far, but we need to do a dinner or something.
Yeah, I didn't know y'all moved. So we're out of Smyrna now, man. So, but we can make that happen for sure.
Dude, it's literally. I went to MTSU the other day. It took me 35 minutes because I took 840 from 109 to 840. 35 minutes, bro.
Man, 840 is magic.
Yep. So literally, we'll have to set up some sort of dinner. Plus, we don't have kids here. We got dogs, and my wife loves kids. So, and your kids will probably have a good old time with these dogs over here.
I'm sure, bro.
And they love kids. So, hey, real quick before I let you go, we haven't done it here yet, but we have this huge, like this gigantic movie screen, and we got a projector. And what we were doing before is setting it up in the yard.
Yeah.
And we had some friends over that had kids one night, and we watched Sonic and,
Yes.
So
man.
Let's do that soon, for real, bro.
No, it's done. Just like this podcast, we were able to pull it off and get it together. So it's warming up outside now too.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's literally perfect. So, all right, my friend, I'm about to literally, as soon as I get off with you, I'm gonna go back this thing up. Then I'm gonna edit it tonight, and it'll be up tomorrow morning. I'll shoot you a link.
Sounds good, man. I appreciate it, bro.
Yes, sir. Have a good one, brother. I'll talk to you later, man.
All right, man.
All right, bro.
Peace.
All right, guys. So thank you again for listening to the podcast, man. That was my man, Verbs. I'm gonna have to get that guy a call tomorrow because we got some more memory lane stuff to do. Again, guys, it's been an hour and 10 minutes. Thank you so much for listening, man. I can't even tell you how much I appreciate you. Whether you and I know each other personally or whether you just somehow stumbled upon the podcast or picked it up from somebody else, thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Remember, take care of each other, love one another, wear a mask. This pandemic is real. People are dying. All right, but above all, love each other. And we'll do this again in about 8 days. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. Have a good one.